Welcome back everybody, Old Bearded Gaming with you here with part 2 of our Octopode Summoner run. We are down in Lair and we're going to waste no time, we're getting right into it. Let's go. So just because we've chosen to go with Lair doesn't mean that it's the easiest walk in the park compared to the rest of the dungeon. It is easier, but by no means is it a complete breeze. You still have to have your wits about you and tackle Lair like we have the rest of the dungeon so far, as a puzzle. Positioning, very important. Make sure that we continue to be cognizant of that, where we are in relationship to particularly our Lightning Spire and our Guardian Golem Explosion remote detonation system. Now, I find that Layer 1 is a perfect opportunity to assess whether or not we want to pull the trigger on utilizing some of our potions of mutation. If you only have one potion, probably don't want to pull the trigger. If you do get stuck with something negative, you don't have another opportunity to re-roll it. But because I have two, I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger, see if we get something good. And as luck would have it, we end up with some pretty favorable mutations here. Getting robust is always super beneficial, especially for an Octopode, for a Felid, for a Spriggan. It's just that extra hit points can make or break a run. It really can. Getting a tick there of resist cold, always super nice. And the antenna thing is kind of but it does let me know at least potentially if a particular level happens to be segmented or not. So there is that going for it, but I can take or leave that. It's certainly not worth re-rolling. Now, there are a number of challenges that can be presented in Lair, and we're going to showcase a few of the different unique interactions. Right now, we're tackling a couple of yaks. Not that big of a problem. Lightning Spire fully capable of handling them, as well as Guardian Golem. But basilisks can be potentially dangerous. They can inflict a petrify on you, which you see right there, and in a couple of turns, we're going to turn to stone. The way to deal with this is make sure you have your Lightning Spire and your Guardian Golem out, and that you're positioned between them and the basilisk. They should take care of the rest. Now, by contrast, water moccasins are just somewhat incredibly beefy and dangerous. In fact, they outlast the lightning spire here. I have to resummon it. I get poisoned. Don't panic. Just reposition around your stationary and allow your other summons to handle it, if not the lightning spire on its own. Now, similar to the basilisk, we have the Catoblipos, which is a Ethiopian mythological creature, often referred to as the African Gorgon, and rightfully so. This has a petrify ranged attack that leaves these looming clouds of calcium, more or less, out on the field. And if you stand more than 2 turns, specifically the second turn, inside of that petrifying white mist, you will calcify and turn solid, and bad news happens. Technically, this puts you with the sleep status in this game. But another side effect of having all of this mist out there on the field is that it's very difficult to see. The solution is very similar to everything else. We get our summons out there, Lightning Spire, Guardian Golem, allow them to do the damage. They can fall asleep as well, even though they're constructs, which is kind of weird. But giving them a couple of turns, you just need to dodge and stay out of the white mist. If you get hit with it, no big deal. Just make sure your next move is out. So taking just quick stock of where we are right now, our summoning is at 10, spellcasting is almost at 9, fighting and dodging have never been turned off, we keep them going, we absolutely need the benefits that those give us, but we did turn on translocation and transmutation. We are sitting on dragon form, which is a great transmutation. It's not quite the form I'm looking for. I've got a soft spot for storm form. It's just so much better than all the other forms out there. But dragon form is passable, so we're not wasting any points in working towards getting that online. Now with layer 1 cleared out, no big deal. We get a little surprise on layer 2. We get shafted down all the way to layer 4. Yeah, it happens. So what are you going to do about it? My personal philosophy when stuff like this happens is to really just kind of slow down your game, almost take your hands off the keyboard. Come across a dream sheep, they tend to travel in packs. I didn't really want to expose or see if there was many more there. If I could walk away from it, would go back the other direction. And then there's a torpor snail and the death yaks. Don't really want that combination right now. Again, if I can avoid it, I would rather do that on my own terms where I know where the exits are. So I choose to pop a scroll of magic mapping. see exactly where these exits are. And as it turns out, I'm going to have to go past one of these. So the Dream Sheep, I think I can probably skate all the way down here, keep it out of view, which I do. And as it turns out from the magic map, it's just one that's up there in that little kind of cul-de-sac. So could have gone after it, cleared it out, but I also didn't want to risk waking up the snail and the death yaks over there. So basically just making my way without confrontation to the stairs to start going up to the next level. And then once up in the next level, it's basically the same thing, just kind of rooting around, trying to find where the next set of stairs are to get back to where we were so we can complete Lair 2. And in this process, just because we don't want confrontation doesn't mean that we don't handle our business if something comes at us. So absolutely taking care of a little pack of yaks here, no big deal. Lightning Spire lights them up exactly how I would want it. And we do a little bit more exploration and end up finding some stairs back up to Lair 2, where we can resume clearing out and getting all that experience to help get some additional things online for us. Now during the drop to Lair 4, we saw that potentially Spider's Nest was one of the S branches that was down there for us. We kind of stepped around that, avoided it to uncover it, but here on Lair 2, we did discover the swamp. So these two S branches, not horrible. Snakes is actually relatively easier to be able to go at for the first one, but Swamp will do just fine. As we're clearing these out, though, interesting side note about our Guardian Golem. You see the explosion there going a little bit bigger than it normally would. Whenever you're surrounded by trees, there's always a chance that they can get caught on fire, and the explosion gets bigger than it ought to be. Be aware of it, step away from the conflagration, and you'll be just fine. Now the rest of Lair 2 would be pretty uneventful, though we did happen to come across a neat little dagger here that has a +6 intelligence boost. That's 3 better than the sword that we were holding on to, and honestly, because we're not using it for combat, any sort of a statistical upgrade in our primary stats categories is good. So with Lair 2 done, we move down to Lair 3, which we already had pretty much about halfway explored. There really wasn't anything of super note here to be worried about or that we discovered. Basically just handling business as normal. Picking up all the loot, clearing out the packs of yaks, the water moccasins, etc. No big deal. Lair 3 did have the entrance to the spider lair, the other S branch that we'll be tackling in this run, but fortunately was only guarded by 2 little spiders. So again, nothing all that super crazy. As always, when dealing with webs, you want to avoid walking in them if at all possible when there's monsters on the screen, because you will get stuck, you'll lose a turn, more or less. Now, as we get ready to go down to Lair 4, we get to see one of the more popular Desians of the lair, and that's of the Hydra. Now, Hydras really aren't all that too horrible, especially if you happen to have summoned Giant Cactus by this point, as they have a wonderful reflect damage attack, more or less, that can really trivialize really any big monster, Hydras particularly. But in this case, we didn't have it. So we have to make do with the tools that we have. Lightning Spire and Guardian Golem completely capable of taking care of it. Now the rest of Lair 4 was pretty uninteresting, nothing of note, really. Another Hydra to take down, a couple of Dream Sheep here and there. We did handle those Topor Snails and Death Yaks that were over there on the west side of the map without really any cause for worry. So we could have probably taken care of it when we fell through the shaft, but better safe than sorry. Trust your instincts on that. Now down to the final layer of Lair here, basically just playing things a little cautious. You never know what to expect down here. There can be a number of uniques as well. So use the tools that you have and just start exploring very gently. In exploring the bottom layer of Lair, undoubtedly you're going to come across the slime pit. And there is a chance that when you find the slime pit, you will find an altar to Jiva. Now Jiva is our true Lord and Savior. Don't get me wrong, I love Gozag and I love all the shiny gold that he drops for me, but he's a tool. He's a means to an end to be able to acquire spells that we're missing, maybe some jewelry along the way. And it turns out, and you'll see throughout the progression of this game, Gozag wasn't really all that great to us. The shops that he was able to create for us weren't all the ones that we wanted, and we didn't end up really finding anything super spectacular from any of the shops. They were just kind of, It's good, but it's not game-breaking, amazing. Oh my gosh, this is the coolest Rand art that I've ever come across. That said, Gozag definitely helps fill a need, and it is a crucial first step in going towards our conversion to Jiva. Now, we will talk more about the benefits of converting to Jiva down the road and some of the logistics of how that works with abandoning Gozag. But for now, understand just a very short overview. Part of the reason to do it is because Jiva grants us huge bonuses to both our health and magic point regen. And that'll be important down the road once we do get a form online and hopefully come across the Manifold Assault spell, which allows us to remotely hit up to 4 enemies at max power with unarmed combat. That's a game changer. We can clear the screen of threats before they even get close to us. Now I know this is changing in 0.30 trunk update to being able to only hit up to 2 targets, but we're still playing 0.29 right now, and it's a very viable and powerful way to go through and clear the dungeon. Turning our attention back to the run at hand, we're not really wearing that much in the terms of the way of rings. In fact, we have several open tentacles, and that's almost a bit of a sin. We have 2,500 gold. It's time to put Gozag to work. We get lucky with a jewelry store option here, and a very particularly nice looking ring with +8 intelligence, 4 evasion, but with the downside of potentially offering slow. Now, if we had storm form, that slow's not even a concern, and I would take this ring in a heartbeat. But for now, it's not really the most OP ring in the world. We still have quite a bit of money. We open a second jewelry store, and we've got actually a couple options here, but most notably, and the easiest one to choose from, is going to be that +6 intelligence, +6 dex ring, the Ring of Eternal Night. It's a double bonus, helps with our evasion, adds more intelligence to help getting spells online earlier, and that's a steal. A couple of the other rings are interesting, but they're definitely not a top priority yet. Now, taking a quick peek at what's available in our repertoire, we see that Dragon Form is sitting there as our only available form option right now, but it's still at a 30% failure rate. That's not good enough to get it online, but it is something to point our mind towards as we start thinking about what our next step is going to be. And at this point in the game, having completed Lair 5, taking a look at some of our jewelry and shop options, sitting a little low on gold, we go down to Orc. Now, Orc 1 was a breeze. There was hardly anything there, just a couple of random orcs, an ogre or two, very easy to clear out. We get down here to Orc Mines 2, and we run into, obviously, a little bit more resistance. This is where you're going to find some pretty nasty orcs, some warlords down here, some knights down here, the sorceresses. There's quite a lot of things here that can be particularly dangerous if you're not careful. Now, since we're not rocking any of the mid-level spells, right, we don't have the giant cactus, we don't have forest, okay? We have to be very particular and purposeful in the way that we go about doing things. And you see right there, we turn off the auto collection for gold. Part of that reason, and I should have done this a while ago, is that with Gozag, gold on the floor has a chance to distract enemies. And when you start getting overwhelmed on the screen like we are here, that can come in handy because it can save a turn or two and maybe save your life. So realizing that we're in a bit of a pinch here, we pop a poison scroll to keep things from moving closer towards us, but I'm going to have to cross through that poison and make our way to the emergency exit, get out of this situation. There was just no way to be able to handle how deep we got into it. And we do what every summoner does. We heal up and we come at the problem from a different angle. So we use a different set of stairs, we back a little further away, set up shop, bring our summons out, and try to thin this herd a little bit. The Orc Warlord in particular is incredibly nasty. We saw him put an absolute stop to our run in the Bailey in part 1 of this series, and he can do almost the same thing here. We're not really any better equipped to deal with him other than that the power level has increased with some of our summons. If we're able to take things at a far enough distance, this isn't too much of a problem. Lightning Spire can do some good damage to him, but you notice he has switched to a crossbow, so he's doing remote damage as well. Now things are starting to get a little more critical. The Orc Knight is getting closer. Our Spire is down. As we're trying to retreat, we see the High Priest there that can do some good smite damage. We need out of here. And the way to do that, pop a haste potion, beeline it for the stairs, and let's regroup, heal back up, and come at it from another angle. So this time we slip in behind the original group that we encountered a little further south. Take a peek at this shop here. We actually find a really nice scroll of summoning. These things are fantastic to get as a summoner. Not that that really has any influence over how good it is, but this will come in handy later, trust me. Now, as we're dancing around here trying to very gingerly explore and see if we can't edge closer to some of these orcs to pick them off, it occurs to me that we haven't even really seen some of the badness that can happen down here. In fact, we're going to get cornered back towards that emergency exit again because one of the high priests ends up summoning some really nasty things that can totally put an end to our run. We're just not quite there yet, and we don't have the mid-level summons to be able to handle anything more difficult than what we already have been. You see it right now. The Sun Demon is on the page. Chaos Spawn I'm not really worried about too much, but then we get the Ice Devil. Every step that we take back, it's just less and less likely that we're going to be able to take out this threat. We've now come at this from multiple angles, from all areas of the stairs, and we're just not really any closer to being able to completely solve this problem. So now it's time to change our thinking and come at this a little bit more decisively. Dragon form is only 26% failure rate. We can probably get that down to tolerable levels and get dragon form online with just a little bit of focus and experience. So now it's time to turn everything but transmutations off. By doing this, all experience points goes into transmutations. It's really not going to take that long to get the points we need to get this below the 10% failure rate. So let's head back to where we left off in the dungeon, dungeon level 12. If you recall from part 1, we left dungeon level 12 because of the demon Azrael. Now Azrael's still here, and after clearing the entire rest of dungeon 12 and not really finding that many mobs, there he was sitting in a corner. This time, this is pretty favorable positioning because we are able to get a lightning spire to block his view. I have a guardian golem out, and we're going to be able to just absolutely wreck his day here because he's going to get confused. Our warg is actually going to come over here and land the death blow, which I thought was a little surprising, but I'll take it. A win is a win, and sometimes you just need that. Now, even though that was only one kill, because he was red to us, there was a decent amount of experience to be had there. In fact, we end up gaining 0.6 towards our transmutation, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that 0.6 translated into a 5% improvement towards getting dragon form online. In fact, you see it right here. We bring it up. It's now 21% failure rate. We are getting a lot closer to being able to use this. Now, there's another way to go about trying to improve the reliability of spells, and simply put, increasing the amount of intelligence that you have will help with that. So we do a quick search to take a reminder of what's out there and what we have available to us, and we decide to go ahead and dive another layer deeper. The reason for the dive, straight up, we still need more money to be able to purchase some of those plus intelligent rings. Now, this is a bit of a dangerous situation here. White ugly things, cyclops, centaurs. I hate centaurs. They absolutely destroy runs. They sure can. Before you actually get like Stormform with Blink Bolt online and you can close the distance. So we lure a few of them upstairs. We handle the business. We go back down to Dungeon 13 and take it on from a different perspective. Things get a little bit messy. We've got Demonologist. We got Basilisk in the mix. This can get a little bit out of hand, but believe it or not, this is actually still safer than what we were facing down in Orc 2, and more importantly, potentially what we could be facing down in Orc 2. Remember, we didn't even see the large grouping, the big mass that usually is waiting for you somewhere down there, usually around some of the shops or treasure areas of that dungeon. So at this point, things are looking pretty good. We've got a lot of money. We're getting a little bit closer there. We're down to 17% failure rate. We explore a little more on 13, and we get shafted down to Dungeon 15. This can be dangerous. In fact, we're staring at a Death Knight, a Wraith. There's some other baddies here as well, some Yaktars. A quick note about Death Knights. You see the little red icon, or saw the little red icon in the top right there. He had channeled some power that will reflect direct damage back to you. Fortunately, as a summoner, your summons, including Lightning Spire, do not count as direct damage, so they're able to wail on him and kill him without any risk or danger to you. We'd find stairs leading back up from 15 to 14 and come across Rupert. Rupert's a big bad guy, I'm not going to lie. He's fast, he's strong, he swings a big axe. He's literally Conan. But like most melees, he can be overwhelmed. And this is where that Scroll of Summoning was a fantastic purchase and really just a run saver, to be honest, because we weren't going to be able to get away from him. We would have to have popped teleportation scrolls and hope for the best. Here, we just overwhelm him, he gets confused, and our summons take care of the rest. A quick check to see how things are coming along. We are now over 10 points in transmutation, which translates into less than a 10% failure rate for dragon form. It's time to memorize that bad boy. So we take both dragon form and wereblood that we had, which when active gives you a stacking rolling slay bonus up to +9 slaying for everything that you kill while wereblood is activated. And yes, you can obviously combine the two together. It's one of the best combinations that are out there for just straight up melee damage dealing. At this point, I'm feeling pretty confident about our ability to be able to not only get out of the shaft trap, get back to the dungeon, get some more gold, get some more jewelry, and be able to handle the rest of work too. We pause briefly to be able to check out this treasure trove. They want 6 scrolls of blinking. I don't have any. In fact, there's not even any available in the dungeon. I did a quick search. No, there's none. So we'll see if we're able to get this open or not later down the road. But now it's time to test out dragon form. We pop it, we gain 15 to our armor class, which is fantastic for a poor little octopode like me. And yeah, a lot of fire resist, but we become vulnerable to cold. You know what? I'm going to take it at this point because I'm pretty confident we can work with this to help clear out some really nasty stuff that's in our way. We do a quick little tour here to test out just how long does this actually last, and at current 40% power level, we get just over 70 turns before it wears off. That's not too bad, and this is going to be a game changer. And wouldn't you know it, it wouldn't be long before we can really test out dragon form. We come across one of those particularly dangerous obsidian statues. They summon some really nasty stuff, but you know what? While we're in dragon form, there wasn't a care in the world. We could one-shot pretty much anything that it summoned. Only took a swing or two here to be able to knock out the statue, and the issue was handled. Really, really digging the power level of dragon form. The unarmed combat increase that it adds is like 35 to the base, on top of strength modifiers, etc. In fact, this is a really, really great example of just the true ultimate power of dragon form here. When you have fire around you, you're able to fly. We're fighting hydras, which you have to be a little careful about because your dragon claws actually do cut the heads and add to the number of heads that they have, but we're able to pure DPS past it. And when combined with the benefit of our summons, particularly Lightning Spire, dragon form with the help of others is a very potent combination. So now we would seek our revenge in Orcish Mines 2, take our dragon form down to the poor, sad little orcs, and just kind of have our way with everything. Whether it was priests, knights, etc., nothing here could really stand up to the onslaught and pure DPS power of the dragon form, combined with the Lightning Spire in some situations, just to make sure we had our back covered. We were able to, with the combination of wereblood, just absolutely tear through everything down here. Not a single worry. It was definitely worth going with this strategy of getting dragon form online. We'd end up with enough money through all of that to open another shop. We'd pop a jewelry store. Again, we're not getting bookstores. That's just sometimes the randomness of Gozag. And this particular jewelry store just kind of sucked. Really nothing here that jumped out that said, oh my gosh, I gotta have it. So we would turn our attention now to the swamp. Time to get our first rune of the run. Dragon form inside of swamp actually worked out pretty well. We ran into an early Jorgum on the first level here, and he had some petrifying going on. Before we turned to stone, we were able to get our Lightning Spire out there. Always, always, always have backup when you're facing anything that would petrify you, whether it's a Basilisk, Jorgum there with that petrifying. It just allows damage to be done while you're sitting there helpless, and in this case, it saved us. We ended up getting enough money to go back to that worthless shop that we opened, and after further evaluation, that resist electric with the strength, +6 strength ring, actually seemed pretty beneficial because strength is a modifier to unarmed combat, and I was looking to really push the damage that we could do in our dragon form. we're already kind of a little bit of a glass cannon. We have okay evasion, but not storm form level of evasion. So in this particular fight here, you see, hey, there's benefit to summoning friends, backing off, saving a turn or two, and allowing them to soften things up so that we can get our damage on and the run continues. Play it smart. Don't get a full head of steam and get too aggressive that you can't solve the problem that you came across. Now, a word on monsters here in the swamp. There are a few things that are of serious note. Goliath frogs can be a bit of a problem. The Will-O-Wisps in particular take away one of the biggest advantages of dragon form because they shoot straight through all armor class, and that's a bit of a problem. That said, with patience and dedication and focus, target them, get them taken out, and you'll have an easier time of things. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but that book that we picked up had one of the spells that are very coveted to our run. We don't hesitate to learn it as soon as we can and turn translocations back on, and that's Manifold Assault. It comes to us already at 80% power level, meaning 20% more to go, and we're hitting a maximum 4 targets with our unarmed combat. Even without it, with just a single target on the screen, we can delete stuff before it even gets close. And we'd have a chance to put Manifold Assault on its full test very, very soon. Down here in Swamp 4, we came across the unique Bai Shu Zen. I don't know that I'm pronouncing that right. I don't care if I am or not. This is a very dangerous mob to come across. Not only do they usually find themselves accompanied by a number of hydras. We're out in the open here, right? I've got a couple of summons to kind of keep things at bay a little bit, but Manifold Assault is going to allow us to bring things down to where they go through their transformation. And in this phase, they start shooting out some electricity. They've got a wave attack that can knock you back. We make it a non-issue because of Manifold Assault. We pop it and hit it multiple times in a row, and we do enough damage to take it out before it even came near our person. That is how we succeed with using a form in combination with Manifold Assault. But you gotta weigh the pros and cons. You gotta leave yourself enough reserve in the tank, because while it's tempting to just spam a macro for Manifold Assault, you can very quickly deplete your magic reserves, and you do not want to run out of enough MP to be able to recast your form as it gets ready to disappear on you. That could put yourself in an unsolvable situation. That said, it's victory lap time as we claim our first rune, the swamp rune, the decaying rune, pick up all the gold that we found, and as luck would have it, we'd have enough to open up another store. This time we finally get a book emporium on the list. And as happy as I was to see that option, I was immediately pretty kind of bummed out that there wasn't much here for us to kind of chew on. Now, don't get me wrong. The Necromonicon, whatever it is, the Necromancer book there with Death's Door, that is an absolute game-changing book. Great to see that it exists in this run, because if you're keen on going on a 15 rune run, Death's Door is absolutely crucial and vital to the success of that run. But no time to wallow in what we don't have, time to press on, and that means the Spider's Nest. Now, there are a number of things to be worried about in the Spider's Nest, particularly a few mobs that can really kind of ruin your day as a summoner. The ones I hate the most are easily the ghost moths, and if you don't have See Invisible, you can find yourself just walking around suddenly being drained of all of your magic reserves. You won't have anything to cast, you won't be able to go back into your form. It can be a very dangerous situation. So See Invisible has some very great utility in this particular dungeon. Additionally, things like the Entropy Weaver can be very, very dangerous to us. They have the ability to kind of bind you up and have a drain attack. But as you see for the regular run-of-the-mill mobs down here, Dragonform burns right through them. Now, broodmothers are also something to kind of keep an eye out for, just simply because they summon other spiders, and they can summon a wide variety of them that can really kind of put the hurt on. Wolf spiders do a decent amount of damage. There's some confuse attack that you have to be worried about. Tarantulas on their own, really not much of a problem. But the little white spiders there, I believe they're called the Colicivora. Not really sure how to pronounce it, but they're kind of the healers of the spider world. You see them, absolutely target them. Now for a brief second, you saw an orb spider on the screen, but I promptly deleted it with Manifold Assault. I do not want them getting off their LOD attacks. I was dumbfounded the second I picked up this book. Right here, Storm, Form, and Maxwell's. Both very coveted spells for Summoner Run. This basically all but assures at this point I knew this run was 100% going to be successful. The only thing that would ruin this run would be my own hubris if I decided to get just completely stupid with the way that we play the rest of the game from here on out. This run was in the bag. That is how good this combination is in 0.29. And absolutely, read Amnesia. That imp is out of here. We're making room. We are going to bring Stormform online. It's already at about 7%. We turned on Air to be able to get that back up so we can boost the success rate of that a little bit as well as the power. Again, Stormform does not start out as powerful as Dragonform. It does take a little bit more skill investment to be able to get it up to similar levels. But honestly, at this point, the run is completely changed, and you're going to see a great example of it right now. So we're going to pop Stormform here. We're going to turn my absolute favorite shade of blue in the entire world, descend down into Spider Nest 2, and be just surrounded, confronted with a whole bunch of spiders. And I do not hesitate to simply tab through them all. That is how good Stormform is. Tremendous amount of damage and evasion. So Spider 2 and 3, really not a problem. We drop down into Spider 4 and are face to face with one of the most notoriously difficult uniques in the entire game, Mara. Mara is dangerous, even for a storm form wielding master, because Mara can make not only a clone of your player ghost, but of your summons as well. And as it will turn out in this particular fight, Mara blinks away, gains some distance, creates a ghost of me, and eventually clones my Lightning Spire. That's potentially dangerous. Now, fortunately, in Storm form, lightning is completely impervious to us, so I'm not really worried about that. But the damage that Mara can do is tremendous. And they've got some ranged attacks as well, being able to shoot some fire at us. Potentially a very dangerous situation here. When we talk about hubris ending a run, it almost comes to fruition here. I get blasted. And right here off the bat, I should have remembered, you know what? I'm worshiping Gozag. I have Potion Petition. I can immediately heal and gain some additional buffs that may turn the tide here. Mara's hurting. Mara is almost dead, but instead of doing that, I take a step back and I go upstairs, dragging Mara with me. The thought process here is I didn't want other spiders to get involved. I didn't want them cloning additional things that could, just overrun me. I wanted more of a one-on-one fight. As it turns out, the very next move, they made a new ghost of me. So now I start to slow down. I take my hands off the keyboard and I start going through the motions. What do I have available? We remember the Potion Petition. We remember I have other options beyond just my consumables. Because as I was looking through the scrolls that I have and the potions I have, it's like, yeah, I've got some things that could help, but I can't do them consecutively and not avoid getting blasted out of this game. Fear wasn't really going to be an option. Fog probably wasn't going to help. I needed haste. I needed healing. I need damage buffs. The only way I'm going to get that is with Potion Petition. And as a summoner of Gozag, it can be very easy to forget that you have that available to you so long as you have 400 gold. As it turns out, we get a nice heal and Berserk Rage. It's exactly what we need to then one-shot the remainder of Mara, which will cause their illusion to disappear. Crisis averted, situation handled, because we slowed down and we looked at the options available. With Mara out of the way, Donald is really incredibly trivial as we handled this situation very, very easily with Manifold Assault, with summons, even with the Sun Moth floating around there. This is a bit of a victory lap now. So let's set the stage for what we've got remainder coming down the pipe here. Spider's Nest 4 is going to be cleared out. We're going to pick up the rune, give us our second one, both S branches now completed. We're sitting in a pretty good spot. I think the turning tide obviously getting storm form, but it wasn't even 100% necessary. We could have achieved the same thing with dragon form so long as we were a little bit more diligent about making sure we were using our summons. There was actually even probably a couple of spells that we could have learned that would have facilitated the work that we were doing, but once you have a form online in Manifold Assault, that's kind of your bread and butter. It's going to be able to handle easily 90% of the things that you come across. So what's coming up next? We've got a couple of great things for you guys. There will be part 3, obviously, which will show the conclusion of this run. Spoiler alert, it actually is going to end up being a 5 rune run, simply because it's just too easy not to do it. We could leave it at 3, but it almost feels like cheating ourselves of some very easy things that we can do that kind of puts a little bit of flex on the game, and it's worthwhile to showcase those. We will end up doing our conversion to Jiva as well, and showing how to completely mollify the tantrum that Gozag throws at us for leaving his worship and choosing to go with the slime god. In the process of doing that, we're going to get the slime rune, show how to max out our piety level with our newfound Lord and Savior Jiva. We will also show how to clear out the entirety of the vault. And Vault 5 is a ton of fun. Part of the reason why we go ahead and just grab this this extra rune that we don't need, because it is a literal blast going down there and handling everything with a tip-top storm form shape. And being in such great form, we are going to showcase how to go into the abyss and just pillage the rune down there. It is so easy with Stormform, Manifold Assault, and the regenerative properties of Jiva to flow through the abyss, target down to the lower levels to improve the odds of finding the rune, and take it. Additionally, you could come back and spend time in the abyss leveling up if you needed to, particularly for a longer, more extended 15 rune game run. As we wrap up playing Inventory Manager here, I want to thank you from Old Bearded Gaming for hanging out with us, watching this part 2 of the series. Look forward to seeing you in part 3 and really celebrating the success of what this build can do in part 4. More to come. Take care, everybody. Cheers.